there, I'm Representative Tammy Simmons, and welcome to ManchTalk, the place where you'll hear about the good, the bad, the ugly, and the beautiful about our great city of Manchester and its surrounding communities. Today, I wanted to talk to you about ratings of legislators and that sort of stuff. But first, I have to say this. What is up with the parking meters in downtown Manchester? It shouldn't be this difficult. When people come to downtown to spend their money in restaurants and different shops downtown, it shouldn't be a challenge to use the parking meters. Yet, if you watch people, half the people walking away from the parking meters look dumbfounded. And I completely understand it. Last week when I came down, I tried to put my debit card into the meter because you can't use dollars, you can only use coins and debit cards. So I put my credit card in, it contacts the bank, it says pay with value buttons. I push the little value buttons, nothing. Can't get a receipt. Fine. I cancel, I take the time, I call the parking division, they ask me what meter number, so on and so forth. Finally, they send a guy over. He writes me a handwritten slip to put on my dash so that I don't get a ticket. Fine. It was a one-time thing, machines break. I get it. So today I come downtown, I'm in the wind tunnel that is Elm Street in the nice hot sun, and this time I've come armed with quarters so that I don't have to play with the debit card. I put a quarter in, it comes out. I put another quarter in, it comes out. I put another quarter in, this one stays. I push value button, nope, can't do it. Put another quarter in, this one stays. Pay with value buttons, nope, still won't do it. Hit cancel, gives me my quarters back, I try again. This time when I hit cancel, it kept one of my quarters, so I'm already down 25 cents. Then I figure, oh, fine, I'm gonna have to pay with the debit card. I put the debit card in, it contacts the bank. Pay with value buttons, push the pay with value buttons. Nope, no receipt. So needless to say, I left my car on Elm Street waiting to get a ticket because I didn't have time to stand there and try to figure out what it is that this machine would like me to do in order to actually pay with value buttons. I get that we have to have meters in order to keep people from parking there all day so that people can come and, conduct business downtown. But it shouldn't be this difficult. And quite honestly, 2 hours is really tough if you're having a lunch meeting or a business meeting. You can't get up in the middle of a big meeting with work and run down the street and try to put quarters in a machine that don't want to let you put quarters in it in the first place. It should probably be 3 hours, and definitely they need to do something about those meters. So now that I've ranted about that, let me get back to the subject at hand. As you know, I'm a state representative. I represent Ward 10 in West Manchester. Last week we had Victoria Sullivan. She's a representative from Ward 9 right here in Manchester. And we are now done with voting for the year. Reps are elected for 2 years, so you have a 2-year voting record. You can go back and look back at all the different things you had to vote on, and there's one telling thing that always lets you know if you've done what you think you set out to do. And those are the scores and the grades put out by a variety of different organizations. Let me preface this with I'm a Republican, so I know more about things from the Republican stand than I do from the Democrat stand. There may be scoring mechanisms out there that the Democrats use that I'm not aware of, but I do think that the predominant groups that do track the bills and issue scorecards are either nonpartisan or Republican-based. So that said, I thought I'd share with some of you listening how the process works, how the different scores are graded, and how you can interpret the grades best so that when you cast your votes in either the September primary or the November election, you actually know if you're voting for somebody that espouses similar principles to yourself. I'm going to start with the most recently released grades. AFP New Hampshire, which is Americans for Prosperity, they are an organization of 42,000 grassroots activists who support lower taxes, less regulation, and small government. They are nonpartisan, but those lower taxes, less regulation, and small government do tend to be more common in the Republican Party than in the Democrat Party. And last week they released their report card. I'm happy to say that I got an A. Victoria Sullivan also got an A. Larry Gagnon got an A. And Representative Mark McLean, who's my favorite freshman from Manchester because he's been such a great vote on the Republican side, also got an A. We all got A's. When you look at the report card, there are some A pluses. Let me just clarify how this happens. AFP picks these bills to base their votes on. They are mostly on taxes, minimum wage, pension information. They definitely considered Medicaid expansion, our regional greenhouse gas initiative, RGGI, things like that. They have their group of items that they score things on. They don't score it on every vote we cast, only on the ones that AFP is interested in. In my case, and I believe in Victoria's case, and I wouldn't be surprised if in Mark and Larry's case, we all scored 100%. And you might wonder, well, then why wouldn't we get an A plus instead of an A? The reason is not everybody's there for every single vote. When you go up to Concord, you're there every Wednesday pretty much for, 6 months out of the year. Sometimes you get sick. Sometimes the kids are sick. Sometimes you have to leave because you have to be someplace and you just miss votes. I know Victoria had to leave one day early, so she missed a few votes. I know back in, I think, February when we had back-to-back session days, I was there the first day and then had the flu the second day. So even though, according to AFP, I have always voted correctly, I missed some votes, so they can't give me the A+. They can't give Victoria the A+, but we have consistently voted along the same values that the AFP puts forward. There were a whole lot of F's on this report card. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 of the 33 representatives in Manchester, Republican and Democrat, 21 of the 33 got an F rating from Americans for Prosperity. It's worth looking at. You can Google AFP and H or go to their Facebook page and find a link to their scorecard. It's got the bills that they use to come up with these scores. It gives you the rating, and you can read more about them there. And that's one way of looking at how the people that are going to be asking you for your vote this year, how you can judge them. So that's more of a national organization with a New Hampshire base. The next organization I wanted to talk about is the House Republican Alliance. The House Republican Alliance is made up of legislators and prior legislators. It's really like a caucus. They review all the bills, and by they, I mean a group of legislators and former legislators. They read every bill and come up with a recommendation based on basically two factors: whether it's constitutional and whether it's in the New Hampshire Republican Party platform. If it's not in one of those two things, even if it's a bill everybody in the HRA likes, they generally will issue a vote your conscience or a no recommendation on what they call the pink sheet. Every Wednesday when we go to the State House, somebody's standing at the State House handing out pink sheets. This is from the House Republican Alliance. They've been doing this since, I think, 97. They will look at a bill and say, due to these reasons, here's what the bill's about, and because the platform says X, we recommend ought to pass. Or because the platform says X, we oppose ought to pass. And they give their list of recommendations, and, I would say a majority of the Republicans take the pink sheet and consider it when they're casting their votes. Now, at the end of March, when we have crossover, and then again at the end of the session in June, they compile a score. They include every bill that they made an up or down recommendation on, and had a bill that has a roll call, because without a roll call, there's no way to identify how a legislator voted. So every roll call that they made a recommendation on, they include in the scorecard, and they include them all equally. They don't weigh this bill is more important than this bill. They just weigh them all the same. Now, what's confusing is sometimes on one bill, you could have 7 or 8 roll calls on one bill on a variety of different things. The HRA might say, we oppose ought to pass based on X, Y, and Z reasons. But then there might be floor amendments, and that floor amendment might change the bill enough that we would support the ought to pass as amended because it significantly changed the bill. So sometimes when people are looking up people's voting records on the general court website, it can be a little confusing and it can be a little misleading because sometimes a vote of nay actually means you support the bill because the bill was recommended to die. So sometimes the scorecards are very helpful because they're compiling it, and the people compiling it know what the bills were about and know how the voting system works in the state house and knows how to calculate out a reasonable score. Just to touch base on Manchester, we don't have the scores for June yet. They're still being compiled because we were just there. And they're going to add in the scores or the votes from the special session that we had on the 16th of June. We have Republicans at the very top. Again, it's consistent. Myself, Victoria Sullivan, Mark McLean, consistently in the high 90s. Which means we're voting on constitutional matters and on things in the New Hampshire Republican platform. So if you're looking for strong Republicans, you can go to nhhra.org. You can download the entire scorecard. Like I said, right now it's just through March, which is crossover. And soon there will be one for the whole year, and there probably will be a combined one for the 2-year session. It is interesting because while I don't expect Democrats to vote along the Republican Party platform because they're Democrats, there still are constitutional issues involved. And whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an undeclared representative, you should still be voting for things that are constitutional and not voting for things that are unconstitutional. It's always interesting to see the differences between the Democrats and the Republicans and look at it over the years, and it always seems on both sides of the aisle that reps, when they first come in, seem to be a little less party line than when they are year after year. The longer they're in, it seems, the more they vote with their party. Myself included. If I look at my first HRA score, it was only a 91, and now I'm up near 95. So I can't say that they're doing something wrong because I'm probably doing the same thing. Most of the Democrats score down in the single digits or the teens, with the exception of Amanda Bolden, who is a strong Liberty rep, and she tends to be right about in the middle. She doesn't, I would honestly say she probably doesn't vote straight party line for either party. So again, NHHRA for the House Republican Alliance, New Hampshire House Republican Alliance, nhhra.org. You can download their score sheet. You can see how your reps voted and how your candidates voted. The last organization that I want to talk about is the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. For those of you who don't know what the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance is, it is nonpartisan. They don't support Republicans over Democrats, Democrats over Republicans. They base all of their recommendations, their endorsements, on the premise of more liberty or less liberty. Their website says they're a nonpartisan coalition working to increase individual freedom. And they review every bill. They have volunteers all over the place that read and review every bill to see if it's pro-liberty or anti-liberty and to what degree. Because some bills might be anti-liberty but don't impact a lot of people. Other bills could be anti-liberty and impact the entire state. So obviously one would be more anti-liberty than another. They evaluate them based on civil liberties, personal responsibility, property rights, accountability, constitutionality, affordability, regulation, fiscal impact, and taxation. All very simple, basic concepts. It is interesting, to note that both the Liberty Alliance and the HRA both factor in the constitutionality of bills when they're making their decisions, as would AFP. I'm just saying the constitutionality of legislation is consistent through all of these organizations. Now, the NHLA, as I said, so they have volunteers that rate all these bills. Then they have a group that works every week to create what's called the gold standard. This is handed out by volunteers every week at the State House as well. They make their recommendations based on the liberty impact, not based on the New Hampshire Party platform or anything. So it can be kind of confusing for some reps that are pro-liberty and Republicans because they want the Liberty Alliance to oppose a bill, but they can't really make the argument as to why it's anti-liberty, or there might be a pro-liberty bill that they'd like the HRA to recommend ought to pass on, but they can't point to a spot in the state party platform or in the Constitution to substantiate that recommendation. So they do things different, and there is a lot of overlap, but there's days where the HRA says vote yay and the Liberty Alliance says vote nay, and that's where reps have to kind of weigh which is more important, which viewpoint they more align with. Then at the end of the cycle, at the end of the year, the Liberty Alliance has an annual Liberty Dinner, and I'll go back to that in a second, where they give it out an award for Legislator of the Year, and they have an Activist of the Year award, and they hand out their Liberty rating. It's a whole document with all the legislators and all the bills that they use. Now, they don't necessarily include all the bills that they've made recommendations on. They also can include votes that they didn't make a recommendation on. So they will consider things that they didn't make a recommendation on, and they're not trying to trip up legislators. It's just that sometimes there's a roll call vote that has an impact on liberty that they maybe didn't have in their gold standard, and they will include it. And then they weigh them. So every bill is not considered equally. Some bills might have a heavy weight, and they might count against or for you far more than other bills. So they compile their records, and they come up with this Liberty rating and release it at their dinner. I went back and looked at the past few years to see what our votes were. Again, there seems to be a pattern here. Myself, Victoria Sullivan, Mark McLean, all scored, and Dick Marston, all scored A's on the Republican side. And Joe LaChance. I'm sorry, I'm going to back up. For 2015, not for 2016. Joe LaChance, Amanda Bolden, Mark McLean, myself, Victoria Sullivan, and Dick Marston all scored A-, A, or A+. Just for clarity, mine was an A+. I tend to pick the Liberty Alliance gold sheet over the pink sheet when there's a doubt, because I tend to be more pro-liberty. But that's beside the point. So there seems to be a pattern with voting records. What is interesting about the gold standard and the Liberty Alliance and their liberty rating is that they also include dereliction of duty and incompletes and constitutional threats. So if you're really, really, really a bad vote, if you're voting against liberty all the time, they will give you what's called a constitutional threat vote. And in 2015, Democrats Mary Freitas and Bob Backus and Kendall Snow all received a constitutional threat rating. Additionally, for those who don't show up, they ding them for that. We've got, in 2015, Representatives John Judy, Ted Rokas, Tom Katziantonis, and Ben Baruti all got either dereliction of duty or incomplete. If you're going to run for state rep, and you're going up to Concord to represent people, the very least you could do is drive to Concord and vote. I can't emphasize enough how little some reps attend. Ted Rokas, I don't know if he's even been there at all in the 2 years that we've been there. And he's not running again, so you don't have to worry about re-electing somebody who's not going up. But year after year, he was getting elected, but he wasn't going. From a Republican standpoint, I guess I'd rather have a Democrat that's not showing up than a Democrat that is, because at least they're not voting against stuff that I believe in. But I still don't think that's fair to your constituents. You need to go to Concord and represent them. The second biggest culprit of not attending is our own Tommy Katziantonis. Tommy represents Ward 8, and I use the word represent lightly because he is elected in Ward 8 as a state rep, but he consistently has horrific attendance. He got a dereliction of duty in 2015, in 2014, in 2012, and what they were considering an incomplete from the AFP in 2016. That means he doesn't go. He doesn't vote. He's not representing anybody. If you live in Ward 8, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, please consider voting for somebody else. Vote for somebody who's actually going to represent you. There's another Democrat, there's 2 Republicans. You have lots of people to choose from. vote for somebody who, at least if you have an issue that's important to you, they're actually going to go up and they're going to vote for you. So when you're looking at elections, and whether it's in primaries in September, because there's quite a few primaries in the city, whether on the Republican side or the Democrat side, you should take the time to look at some of these scores. And beyond this, some of the endorsements that'll come out. If you're a Republican and you're a strong Second Amendment supporter, look at the gun recommendations. Look at how the NRA scores. Look at how gun owners in New Hampshire score. Keep in mind that they all use a different methodology. Some of them won't score non-incumbents as high as they'll score incumbents because they just don't have a voting record to look at. There's a degree of fairness to that, but it sometimes can be misleading because you could have a very, very strong Second Amendment advocate who just has never happened to win an election, who will look like they're scoring lower than somebody who maybe isn't as strong of a Second Amendment advocate as them. So you have to kind of look at it in the bigger picture. How did they do with the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance? How did they do with the House Republican Alliance? How did they do with AFP? Who's endorsed them? Which organizations have endorsed their candidacy? And then from there, look at the individual issues that are most important to you and, make your decisions that way. It's unfortunate that so many times, and I've been guilty of it myself in the past, so many times people go into the ballot box and they literally are just filling out ballots because they know the name. They don't know anything about them. They just know, I've seen that name on the ballot, for 10 years now. So they think, oh, well, he must be okay because people keep re-electing him. Yet people re-elect Tommy Katziantonis and he just doesn't go. So do a little homework, do a little research. You'll feel better about it when people get elected, that they're better representing you if you've taken a little bit of time to look into their past voting records. I do want to take a time and talk about the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance Liberty Dinner. They hold a dinner every summer. This year it is on Sunday, July 10th, and it's going to be right here in Manchester at the Dairyfield Country Club. Tickets, if you're not a member, I believe are $60. It's a big dinner. I think there was like salmon and prime rib, so it's a good dinner. Dairyfield does a good deal. There's also a cocktail party. You can come to just the cocktail party and mingle with the different state legislators that'll be there. It is really a good event. They have a keynote speaker whose name eludes me at the time, but it's usually a very interesting dinner. Lots of great people. You'll get to meet a lot of your reps. That you can find information about that at their website. You can either go to nhliberty.org or you can go to libertydinner.com and buy tickets right there. So that's really mostly what I had today. Hate the parking meters, really kind of loving Liberty, loving seeing the grades and seeing how people are doing at the State House. I know when I cast my vote, there's times I struggle with which way to go. Ultimately, I have to own the votes that I cast. I'm proud of the scores that I've earned. I've consistently scored an A from the Liberty Alliance every time I've been elected. I consistently score in the 90s from the House Republican Alliance. I've got an A and 100% from Americans for Prosperity. There's another set of numbers that are out there where they ask you, somebody looked at how we vote with Republicans, not necessarily with the Republican Alliance, not necessarily with the Liberty Alliance, but with my caucus, with other Republicans who casted votes that day. And myself, Victoria Sullivan, and Mark McLean consistently vote at the top of that group. We vote with our Republican caucus the most. If you have any questions about any of these scores or would like directions on how to find them, please send me an email. You can send it to ManchTalk, all one word, ManchTalk@gmail.com, or you can also follow us on Facebook or on Twitter at ManchTalk, all one word. But I'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback on the show, if you have an idea for upcoming episodes, or like I said, if you have any questions about the Liberty Alliance or the House Republican Alliance or anything to do with the State House, please, by all means, email me. I can always just tell you that I don't know the answer, but I can probably point you in a direction to get you the answer that you're looking for. Thank you for tuning in. I look forward to talking to you next week. And get out there in Manchester. Enjoy the beautiful weather we're having. Get out on a kayak on the river or take a walk on one of the trails. And I'll see you next week.